Ladies and gentlemen, gather close, and let the scene paint itself in your mind. Picture a world of endless, silent white, a land where the very air sparkles with frozen breath, and the sun is but a pale, distant memory. This is where our story begins, not with a roar, but with a profound and aching silence. Our protagonist was not born a monarch. No, they began as a mere shard of that very cold, alone in a blizzard of their own sorrow. Perhaps they lost everything. Perhaps their heart was frozen by a betrayal so deep it stopped beating altogether. They were a solitary figure in a vast, white canvas, their spirit as brittle and cold as the icicles hanging from the lonely pine trees. This was the prologue of Ice, a life before life. The beginning of our tale is not one of light, but of a gradual dimming. It does not open on a throne of glittering ice, but in the quiet, suffocating confines of a prison built not of stone and iron, but of memory and regret. This is the prologue of Ice, the foundational chapter in the life of the one who would become the Monarch of Frost, and it is a story deeply woven with the emotional tapestry and visual poetry characteristic of Korean anime. Imagine, if you will, a soul not born into cold, but one that has retreated into it. Our protagonist began in a world of warmth, perhaps as a vibrant village guardian, a scholar of ancient arts, or simply a person who knew the simple joy of sunlight on their skin. They lived in a world of color. But tragedy, in the way it often does in these deeply human stories, did not strike like a single, clean blow. It was a slow creep, a series of small, heart-breaking fractures. A promise broken by someone they trusted implicitly. A failure so profound it shattered their sense of self. The slow, agonizing loss of someone they loved more than life itself, a loss that left not a clean wound, but a hollow, aching void. With each of these fractures, a subtle chill set in. It began internally, a numbing frost that started in the heart and spread outwards through their veins. This is where the animation of their life would visually shift. The world around them, once painted in the warm palettes of a summer day or the golden hues of a harvest festival, would slowly desaturate. The vibrant reds of poppy fields would mute to dusty rose, the brilliant greens of the forest would deepen into cold jade, and the cheerful blue of the sky would turn into a pale, lifeless gray. This isn't just a meteorological event, it is a direct externalization of their inner world, a core tenet of the animated storytelling we adore. The environment becomes a character in its own right, reflecting the storm within. Their prison, therefore, is multifaceted. First, there is the internal prison of emotion. This is the permafrost of the spirit. They do not merely feel sadness, they become a vessel for a profound and absolute stillness. Laughter feels like a foreign language they can no longer speak. The comfort of a friend's touch feels distant, as if through a thick pane of glass. Hope, the most dangerous flame of all, is systematically extinguished, for to hope is to risk the agony of being let down once more. They build walls not to keep others out, but to contain the endless winter raging inside themselves, terrified that its chill might hurt anyone who comes too close. They move through the world like a ghost, performing the motions of life but feeling utterly disconnected from them. In this state, they are the most relatable, for who among us has not, at some point, built a fortress around their heart after a profound disappointment? Then, there is the external prison of isolation. As their inner cold manifests, the physical world responds. Perhaps they retreat to a forgotten, snow-swept temple high in the mountains, a place as remote and barren as they feel. Or maybe they remain among people, but a visible, tangible cold emanates from them, a faint mist on their breath even in a warm room, a sudden drop in temperature when their emotions spike, frost that patterns the windowpane beside them without them even touching it. People, sensing this unnatural chill, instinctively withdraw. Conversations falter as they approach. Friends exchange worried glances but dare not cross the invisible boundary of frost they have erected. Our protagonist watches this happen, and it only confirms their deepest belief, that they are now, and forever will be, alone. This isolation is not chosen out of malice, but embraced as a perverse form of protection. It is a self-imposed exile, a sentence they believe they deserve. The animation of this phase would be a masterclass in subtlety and sorrow. We would see scenes where the camera lingers on their hands, unable to reach for another. We would see flashbacks rendered in a warm, soft-focus watercolor style, starkly contrasted with the sharp, high-definition crispness of their cold present. The sound design would be critical. The howling wind outside their window would mirror the silent scream within their chest. The crushing silence of their solitude would be punctuated only by the melancholic strains of a single, lonely cello or a haunting piano melody, the unmistakable sound of a Korean anime score that pulls directly on the heartstrings. This icy prison, however, is not merely a punishment. It is, in a cruel and paradoxical way, a cocoon. The numbness is a defense mechanism against feeling too much, too deeply. The silence is a refuge from the deafening noise of a world that has caused them so much pain. They are not yet the monarch, for a monarch has a domain to rule and subjects to protect. At this stage, they are merely the warden of their own sorrow, and the only prisoner. They pace the confines of their own frozen heart, tracing the patterns of their regrets on the walls of ice, believing with every fiber of their being that this eternal winter is their final, inescapable truth. It is a poignant, beautiful, and devastating portrait of a soul in stasis, setting the stage for the incredible, transformative thaw that is destined to come. If the first act of this story is defined by a slow and painful freezing, then the second is defined by a single, impossible crack in the ice. The thaw never begins with a roaring inferno, that would be too violent, too shocking for a spirit so brittle. It cannot be forced. Instead, it begins with a single, stubborn point of warmth that refuses to be extinguished, a narrative turn that feels deeply authentic to the character-driven arcs of Korean anime. This spark of connection takes many forms, each one personal and profound. It might be a character, not a powerful warrior, but perhaps a persistently kind-hearted individual, someone foolishly optimistic who simply refuses to acknowledge the cold shoulder they are given. This person doesn't try to break down the walls with grand speeches or force their way in. Instead, they simply sit, silently, on the other side of that wall, a constant, quiet presence. They are the one who leaves a warm bowl of food by the door every day, not because they are asked, but because it is an instinctual act of care. Their persistence isn't an annoyance, it is a slow, steady drip of warmth against the permafrost of the protagonist's heart. Alternatively, the spark could be a memory, triggered by a sensory experience. The scent of a particular flower breaking through the sterile scent of snow. The faint, distant melody of a lullaby from a childhood they had sealed away. Or the sight of a small, vulnerable creature, a fledgling bird fallen from its nest, shivering in the snow, a mirror of their own helplessness that they cannot ignore. In that moment, the instinct to protect, a reflex they thought long dead, flickers weakly. They don't heal the bird with ice magic, that comes later. They cup it in their hands, and for the first time in a long time, they consciously try to emanate warmth, to give life instead of presiding over stillness. This moment of connection is the catalyst for a painful, glorious, and terrifying transformation. The thaw is not a gentle process. It is the feeling of blood rushing back into a limb that has been numb for years, a painful, prickling, agonizing sensation. It is the sound of internal ice cracking under the strain of a forgotten emotion. To feel again, after so long choosing not to, is a form of violence against the stable, numb existence they had constructed. The protagonist will likely resist it, pushing the source of warmth away, terrified of the pain that feeling will inevitably bring. They have built their entire identity around being the cold one, the isolated sentinel, and to accept this warmth feels like a betrayal of the very armor that has kept them alive. The animation of this sequence would be a visual symphony. We would see the world's desaturated palette begin to bleed back with subtle, almost imperceptible color. A single, vibrant wildflower might bloom at the protagonist's feet, its color so shocking against the white that it seems to pulse. The soundtrack would swell, not with triumphant brass, but with the tentative, beautiful notes of a strings section, perhaps a single violin representing that fragile, rekindled connection. The most powerful visual might be a close-up on the protagonist's eye, where a single, genuine tear, not of sorrow, but of profound, overwhelming feeling, wells up and finally, falls. And it does not freeze. It traces a warm, clean path down their cheek, the first liquid thing in a world of solid, frozen sorrow. This single tear is the proof that the winter is not eternal. It is the first true victory, small and quiet, but more significant than any battle to come. It is the moment the prisoner first dares to rattle the bars of their cell, not to break free, but to remember what the outside air might feel like. The moment of thaw, that beautiful and painful reawakening, is not the end of the journey. It is, instead, the true beginning of the conflict. For our protagonist, the return of feeling is immediately followed by a critical choice. They now possess a burgeoning, terrifying power over the frost, a force that once imprisoned them but now answers their call. The instinctual, easy path would be to use this power for dominance, to become a tyrant of the tundra, to make the world feel the chill that once tormented them, to force all to kneel before the cold they have mastered. This is the path of the villain, a narrative branch we have seen taken many times, born from a place of unhealed pain and a desire for revenge against a world that caused it. But our hero's heart, now tender and raw from its thaw, chooses a different road. They look upon the very source of their warmth, the persistent friend, the memory of a lost love, the innocent life they saved, and they understand a fundamental truth. True strength is not the ability to inflict one's will upon the world, but the will to become a shield for the fragile beauty within it. The ice is not a weapon, it is a fortress. The blizzard is not an army, it is a barrier. This realization is the true coronation. The crown that forms above their brow is not forged in a fiery smithy, but crystallized from the freezing air in a moment of solemn, selfless resolve. It is heavy, not with jewels, but with responsibility. This is the birth of the monarch. The title is not a celebration of supremacy, but an acceptance of a profound and lonely duty. To be the monarch of Frost means to consciously take the very essence of their suffering, the isolation, the cold, the silence, and channel it into a force for preservation. They become the guardian of the borders, the one who stands between the vulnerable warmth of the village hearths and the mindless, destructive blizzards that rage in the wilds. They use their power to create shields of eternal ice to protect the ancient forests, to weave gentle snowfalls that blanket the crops and ensure a rich harvest, to walk into the heart of a raging storm and calm it with a whisper. This purpose is their crown, and it is also their cross. It is a lonely throne. They cannot fully return to the warmth, for their very nature now regulates the cold. They must maintain a distance, a sovereign of the in-between, forever watching the joyful gatherings from a respectful, chilly distance, ensuring their happiness by embracing their own solitude. This is the ultimate sacrifice, to use the power born from their deepest pain to guarantee that others never have to feel it. They are the shepherd who endures the storm so the flock may graze in peace. Their reign is defined not by conquests listed on a map, but by the silent, unseen catastrophes that never happen, the winters that are harsh but survivable, the peace that blooms under their vigilant, frozen gaze. The monarch does not rule over subjects, but protects a world they can no longer fully inhabit, and in that heartbreaking paradox, they find their nobility. The culmination of this epic tale is not a world reborn into endless summer. To wish for that would be to misunderstand the monarch's entire journey and the profound truth at the heart of their being. The final, perfected state is not the eradication of winter, but its redemption. It is the establishment of a beautiful, fragile, and eternal balance where the cold and the warmth are not at war, but in harmony. This is the final masterpiece of the monarch's reign, a testament to their hard-won wisdom. After the great battles are fought, after the sacrifice is made and the crown is firmly placed upon their head, a profound change settles over the land. The mindless, destructive blizzards that once scarred the earth are now a thing of the past. The frost is no longer a cruel invader that steals life, but a gentle guardian that preserves it. The monarch's power, once a reflection of internal turmoil, is now an instrument of their profound will. They have learned the most difficult lesson of all, that strength is not about destruction or even creation, but about perfect control. The winter becomes a season of breathtaking, crystalline beauty. Snow falls in soft, lazy flakes, blanketing the world in a hushed, peaceful silence. The rivers do not freeze solid, but flow with liquid slush under delicate, lace-like bridges of ice. The trees, once shattered by the weight of their own frost, now stand as glittering sculptures, their branches adorned with ice that catches the low winter sun, scattering rainbows across the pristine snow. This is the final winter of peace. It is a world where the cold has a purpose. It is the quiet season of rest that allows the earth to sleep and dream, ensuring a more vibrant spring. It is the chill in the air that makes returning to a warm hearth and the company of loved ones all the more precious. The people of this world no longer fear the snow, they learn to read its patterns, to understand that the monarch's touch is in every gentle flurry. Children build snowmen without a care, their laughter echoing in the crisp air, a sound the monarch protects above all else. Visually, this finale would be the most stunning sequence in our animated feature. The palette is no longer the desaturated gray of despair or the violent white of the storm, but a symphony of brilliant, clean whites, deep, serene blues, and the dazzling, prismatic light refracted through a million ice crystals. The soundtrack swells not with epic, battling themes, but with a serene and majestic melody, a lullaby for an entire world. We would see the monarch, not on a throne in a crowded hall, but standing alone on a high balcony of their crystalline palace, looking out over their domain. Their expression is not one of joy, but of a deep, solemn contentment. They see the smoke rising from village chimneys, the lights in the windows, the peaceful landscape sleeping under its blanket of snow. They feel the delicate balance they maintain with every breath. In this ending, the monarch finds their peace not in the absence of their nature, but in its mastery. They are the silence that makes the music sweeter, the cold that gives meaning to the warmth, the long night that makes the dawn a triumph. Their complete life story ends not with a sunset, but with the serene, beautiful, and eternal twilight of a world finally, and perfectly, at rest.